This week we've got a local story because apparently David Hogg has decided to come to town. Hogg rallied a whopping 40 high school students to march the 50 miles from Worcester to the doors of Smith Wesson's headquarters in Springfield, Massachusetts. According to the kids, the inspiration for the march was a civil rights march led by Martin Luther King that took protesters the 54 miles from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery in 1965. Thus, the little publicity stunt has been named 50 Miles More and is supposedly about the kids fighting for their freedoms. Hogg and company say they're not looking to take away anybody's rights or ban any guns. Instead, they have two goals. First, force Smith & Wesson to agree to stop producing any military-style rifles like the M&P Sport, and second, demand the company donate $5 million to gun violence research. Now, there's a few problems with this. Hogg and his friends say this should be an easy deal because the M&P Sport is already banned in Massachusetts, so stopping production altogether should be a no-brainer. Except it's not, because the Sport is one of the company's most popular rifles in the rest of the country. According to the Huffington Post, the Sport and other similar rifles account for most of the company's profits every year. So these kids are not only demanding that Smith & Wesson forfeit its most popular product and, by default, most of its profits, but also that the manufacturer gives up another $5 million to study gun violence, a topic that sure gets a lot of money and airtime for supposedly being so woefully underfunded. And actually, while we're on the topic of gun violence, let's talk a bit about Springfield.
Springfield, it's a hell of a town.
Springfield is a shithole. I can say that because I grew up there. Springfield is the kind of place where your kindergarten field trip is cut short because of an attempted murder. True story. The DA is currently sitting on 80 unsolved homicides from the Springfield area. For several years, the city ranked as the 19th and then the 18th most dangerous city in the country. It has since dropped down a few pegs, mostly because other places are getting worse, and it's hard to compare a city of 200,000 to a city of 1 million or more, but it's still considered the number 2 most dangerous metro area in the entire Northeast, second only to an armpit in New Jersey. Now, I'm not saying Springfield is another Chicago, but it definitely ain't cute. Add another 2 million people to Springfield, and it probably would be another Chicago. Don't believe me? Let's run some numbers. According to Neighborhood Scout, Springfield has one of the highest violent crime rates in the country. On an index of 1 to 100, with 100 being the safest, it ranks an 8, which oddly is the same rating as Chicago. Your overall chance of being a victim of violent or property crime in Springfield is 1 in 23, which also is the same as Chicago. Your chance of being murdered in Chicago is admittedly a bit higher than in Springfield, but both cities boast a crime rate of 44 crimes per 1,000 residents. In Springfield, there are 205 crimes per square mile, compared to only 25 per mile in the rest of Massachusetts. The average per capita income, which means average income per person in 2010, which is the last time we have data for, was $19,000. That's it. That's $10,000 less than the national average. The median household income is $35,000. That's $20,000 less than the national numbers. 30% of the city's residents are under the poverty level. Springfield is also a popular spot on the Heroin Highway and has an active community of Latin Kings and La Familia, with about 9 other local baby gangs that cause other general ruckus. You know, selling crack and doing drive-bys kind of ruckus. And with all this going on, Hogg marches in with 40 high schoolers and demands that Smith & Wesson stop making assault rifles in order to end gun violence. Seriously. First off, according to FBI statistics, handguns, knives, blunt objects, feet, and fists are all more popular murder weapons than rifles. As a matter of fact, the only murder weapons less popular than rifles are poison and explosives. The only time we ever really hear about someone using a rifle is during a mass shooting. Criminologist James Allen Fox at Northeastern University estimates that there has been an average of 100 victims killed each year in mass shootings in the last 30 years. That accounts for less than 1% of all gun homicide victims. Hogg and friends have often been accused of going after mass shootings as the exemplar of gun violence while ignoring the general street violence of places like Chicago. And this is just another example of that. I would honestly have a lot more respect for these kids if they knew a single thing about what it is they're trying to fix, or at least what they claim they want to fix. The actual people of Springfield don't even blame Smith & Wesson. It says so right in the Huffington Post article about this little entitlement parade. Quote, "Until recently, aka until David Hogg showed up, many residents of Springfield didn't make the connection between Smith & Wesson and the bloodshed at home. Guess what? Out of all the guns that Smith & Wesson manufactures, only a handful are even Massachusetts compliant. We're talking the Shield, the M2.0, the Bodyguard, and a couple revolvers. That's it. I sincerely doubt that the Latin kings of Springfield are all running around with mass-compliant M&P shields. Even the chief of police acknowledges that none of the guns used in crimes in Springfield are legal guns. Usually they're stolen and then sold to someone else. Even the politicians will tell you that getting an illegal gun in Springfield is as easy as getting a Big Mac. Literally, a mayor candidate campaigned on that just a few years ago. And according to state police, most of the illegal guns in Massachusetts originated in Massachusetts. So with Massachusetts having some of the strictest gun laws in the entire nation, gun control is obviously not the solution. Because as long as there's poverty, as long as there's a black market for drugs, and as long as there's gangs, there's going to be gun violence. But David Hogg is going to take his little ragtag group of predominantly white middle-class kids and go to Springfield to complain about gun violence, while traveling with armed security, mind you. Which is more than just a little hypocritical. Where David lives, the possibilities of being a victim of violent crime is 1 in 1,685. In fact, Parkland is considered safer than 85% of the country. Yes, David's high school was involved in a tragic shooting. Mass shootings are sad and terrible things, but they are not the picture of gun violence in America. They're not even that common. What is the picture of gun violence in America is the same picture of violence anywhere. It's about gangs, money, and drugs. Look at Chicago, Detroit, Stockton. Parkland, Florida is not that picture, and neither is David Hogg. That is your Second Amendment-ish news for the week. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or have a little chat down in the comments. It really does help the channel as it helps boost me up in the algorithms. And if you really like my channel and want to help support me, you can do so over at Patreon or through one-time donation through PayPal, Bitcoin, or Litecoin. Until next time, thanks for watching, stay safe, and happy shooting. And tell David Hogg to go home.